Well, I do think that Sussex Overdrive is unbelievable, but I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which
Yeah.
makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain. Harry and Meghan, the other side, smiling and all the rest of it, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Right.
The Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. It was Meghan speaking, and now we know it's Meghan speaking again. And so this isn't because the book contains that her brand was in great trouble. American Riviera Orchard, that she had allegedly nicked the idea. She wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt she targeted Harry. And that was very critical because at that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to firstly be seen with Harry, and secondly didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap. Declining, I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic, and I think Invictus is his only lifeline, and that's what she used as a weapon at the time. So there were quite a few things about her personal life. I'll work them into another book, I think. Meghan didn't like the surname Mountbatten Windsor. If you remember, in her first lifestyle series with Meghan with Them Forever, she says to Carling that her surname isn't Markle but Sussex. And she was desperate to get it. She said, we never had a proper surname. And of course they did. By not telling the palace what she's going to do. And I think the most interesting story is the Reitman story. Reitman's is like a Marks and Spencer's in Canada.
In Revenge, you talk about how Meghan's lack of knowledge about British history meant she could not understand that Diana had won the public's affection.
She was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted, and secondly, I don't believe she ever intended to stay. She always intended to take the title, take the connections, and get back to California.
Picture the exact instant when years of image control disintegrate under documented evidence that even the most expensive PR teams cannot spin away. For years, one name commanded instant silence from powerful institutions: legal threats, cease and desist letters. But there exists one investigator whose files the Sussexes never dared challenge in court, and his latest findings don't whisper, they scream. We're examining documented contradictions between public statements and verifiable timelines.
To suit Meghan's agenda, and Meghan's living with Meghan is very different than living with Kate and William. Meghan has a completely different attitude, and I think California has a different attitude. So I think we're now seeing a different Harry, and to his misfortune, it's not a Harry that appeals to the same sort of people in the same numbers as previously.
Between tearful confessions and archived records, between the version sold to millions and the paper trail that refuses to cooperate. Before we continue, subscribe and turn on notifications. Royal scandals break faster than palace damage control can contain them, and this channel tracks every development the mainstream media buries. You don't want to miss what's coming. Because according to one of the most meticulous researchers in modern biography, the protective walls around the Sussex narrative are crumbling, and the evidence doesn't need embellishment. It speaks for itself.
What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty.
Rewind to 2018, private jets, security details costing taxpayers millions, a wedding watched by billions, designer wardrobes, a media apparatus terrified of publishing anything remotely critical. That was the height. Fast forward to today, Spotify publicly severed ties with blunt language. Netflix quietly downgraded commitments after underwhelming viewership. Archwell's financial disclosures revealed charitable spending so minimal that watchdog organizations publicly questioned where donations went. And the polling. Approval ratings in the United States dropped to levels reserved for scandal-plagued politicians.
I think there was that, but I've got to tell you, my research for my new book, the number of times she was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice, for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted.
In the UK, historically low numbers. Even Australia, where the 2018 tour was marketed as triumph, flipped completely. These aren't statistics, they're symbols of institutional withdrawal. When major publishers stop returning calls, when A-list events quietly remove names from guest lists, when former media allies begin fact-checking claims instead of repeating them verbatim. That's not temporary backlash, that's permanent reassessment. The houses exist, the titles remain, but the power those titles carried, the ability to command narrative control with one legal letter, that currency has been devalued to irrelevance.
See, Meghan loves money. Meghan's very commercial. She doesn't want to be poor. And then having got all that, she then saw how she needed a consort, a husband who was going to take her to the next stage. And she was on a manhunt, there's no doubt. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being on a manhunt. There are women hunts too, but I mean, she was determined.
We need to separate three layers: verified public record, media interpretation, and unconfirmed allegations. What's documented beyond dispute, the Lilibet trademark controversy. Public records show the domain was secured before palace notification. When the BBC reported the Queen wasn't consulted as claimed, the palace allowed that reporting to stand despite legal threats. That's archived. The Oprah interview. Multiple fact checks identified timeline inconsistencies regarding the wedding date, title protocols existing before Meghan's entry, and security arrangements contradicting palace records.
She is desperate to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem.
The Netflix documentary, released weeks after the Queen's funeral, containing footage recorded months earlier while the family grieved. But then there's the second layer, rumors and insider claims without official confirmation. Stories about Australia tour behavior, allegations about staff treatment, claims about behind-the-scenes tensions. Critical distinction. These should not be treated as proven facts. They're media narratives from anonymous insiders. They may be true. They may be exaggerated.
To create her own brand and image in the whole Netflix series of lifestyle series. She was told she had to give up being the wicked witch in terms of the royal family. She should put that all behind her and not mention them, because people want to see her, not all the time complaining. She couldn't resist, because in the end, one of Meghan's many deficiencies is she has nothing to say. There's no originality.
But without legal proceedings, they remain allegations. And the palace strategy, strategic silence. The institution's default is never complain, never explain. But that vacuum creates space. When one side speaks constantly and the other says nothing, public perception doesn't default to neutrality. It defaults to doubt. There's a double standard here.
Whereas Meghan always has to fight for a place. She has to fight for the spotlight. She has to fight to be seen. And being seen is critical to her. And, she can't, if there's another shooting, she can't fly there as she did.
When William and Catherine face criticism, the palace mobilizes, friendly journalists receive briefings, positive stories appear in waves. When Harry and Meghan face criticism, the palace says nothing, no defense, no clarification. That's not protocol, that's strategic distancing. And it tells you who the institution has decided to protect and who they've let fall.
In California, I can actually deceive them, but I don't want to do that. And the other thing is, I've done nothing wrong. There's nothing that points to me says I'm a bad guy. As a matter of fact, I'm a really loving father, and she knows that. And there's no excuse for her to treat me this way. No excuse to treat the king that way as well.
Let's examine the psychological architecture beneath this. Harry, a man who watched his mother be destroyed by the system he was born into, who witnessed the palace prioritize the crown's image over his mother's safety, his childhood stability, basic human decency. If you believed the institution killed your mother through negligence, how much would you trust them? Harry fled what he perceived as a repeat nightmare. Whether that perception was accurate or paranoia doesn't change his emotional reality. He's convinced he's rescuing his family from a lethal institution. But loyalty and rage can coexist. Harry may hate the institution while loving his father and brother. That internal contradiction is why his attacks feel emotionally raw, yet strategically reckless.
It was branding.
And she gets into one of the best university colleges of America, Northwestern, because of her education and background. So by no means anything other than a happy childhood, although a broken family.
Meghan. The psychological profile is contested. Possibilities. She's a strategic operator who saw the royal platform as a stepping stone, miscalculated the institution's power, and is now salvaging what she can. Or she's someone who genuinely didn't understand royal constraints, felt suffocated by protocols and racism, and made reactive decisions that backfired. Or both, ambitious and wounded, strategic and emotionally raw, calculating about image but genuinely hurt by rejection.
And of course, they're not allowed to come to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, people whom he'd known for years. And even at the wedding of Tommy Inskip in Jamaica, one of the parents who was there told me that Meghan had behaved appallingly. They just couldn't understand why Harry was going out with her. She didn't like the food, she didn't like them.
What's undeniable? Meghan operates as someone who believes her narrative framing is reality. Contradictions don't register as falsehoods. They register as others failing to see the real story. The monarchy itself. To the system, Meghan and Harry aren't family. They're a threat, a PR crisis that won't stop, a security risk. So the institution made a calculation: isolation over engagement, silence over defense, distance over reconciliation, and it might be working. Each passing month, the Sussexes look less like victims and more like operatives attacking an institution that has simply stopped responding. The monarchy's strategy isn't to win the argument. It's to outlast the scandal.
Meghan believed she was as important to the monarchy as Princess Diana, you write in the book. And her visit to Australia in October 2018 only boosted that view. The more Harry drew parallels with his mother, and the more Meghan must have been convinced of her importance to the monarchy. Do you still think she's that delusional?
But the greatest threat to both sides isn't from tabloids or biographers anymore. It's from insiders who no longer have anything to lose. Former palace staff who signed NDAs that may not hold up if they claim whistleblower protection. Royal family members cut off financially, watching the Sussexes monetize grievances successfully.
And what I really thought at the end of it as well was this, which I think is a very, very pertinent point. When they came across for the Queen's funeral, and there was that amazing scene outside the castle of meeting the well-wishers in the walk, there was always talk of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Charles and William and Kate go one side, Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it. But at that time, William didn't know that Harry and Meghan had already recorded their poison for Netflix. It was already edited. All the stuff that we heard today about Charles lying, about William screaming and shouting, was in the can, was being edited. And they duplicitously did not reveal what they were going to.
Producers and former friends who were promised access but got burned. Security personnel who witnessed private moments but were never bound by royal household contracts. These people know what happened behind closed doors, who heard conversations before Oprah, who saw the emails, the late-night calls, the moments when public narrative and private reality diverged. And some are talking, quietly, to researchers, to journalists who protect sources, to producers developing documentaries, gathering footage now. We're in a standoff, both sides armed with secrets, both terrified of the other's nuclear option, both waiting to see who breaks first.
In Meghan's mind, she is Diana.
Yes.
I mean, Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law. So I think that was another reason for Charles to say no.
So here's what I want to know. Do you see Meghan as primarily a victim of institutional cruelty, a strategic operator who miscalculated, or something more complicated? Who do you trust more when accounts contradict, the Sussexes' version or the palace's strategic silence? And if one person with firsthand knowledge decided to tell everything on camera with receipts, whose story would you believe? Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment, and these conversations shape which stories we investigate next.
For Meghan, because when she phoned up the two senators to campaign for women's maternity pay, she said, hello, this is Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah.
I mean, she plays the royal card the whole time. So I don't think that would play well in the election for Congress or even the Senate. So I think they've got to realign their image. I mean, I think in any case, they're burning out their royal status pretty fast now.
So where does this end? One scenario. The Sussexes pivot completely. New branding, public acknowledgement of mistakes. It would require humility, strategic silence, and letting go of victimhood as marketable identity. Another, the palace releases evidence they've held in reserve through friendly journalists and well-timed leaks that systematically dismantle the Sussex narrative. Or the nuclear option. Someone with nothing to lose tells everything. A former staff member with recordings, a relative with emails, and suddenly both sides find themselves exposed.
So I think they've got a real identity crisis, which will be resolved in the next few months, one way or another. I don't think it can be to the good. But the point about it is, you see, they're notorious.
But the most unsettling possibility, what if this is the new permanent state? No resolution, just a slow war of attrition where both sides bleed credibility until nobody wins and everyone loses. The monarchy survives because institutions outlast individuals. But the Sussexes might discover that burning every bridge doesn't create freedom. It creates isolation. If you want to follow every twist as it unfolds, subscribe with notifications on. When the next chapter breaks, you'll want to be here. And check out the video I've linked next on the palace's internal strategy for managing the Sussex crisis.
And she wanted the cover and control of the content, and they had a huge argument. And that meant that he was really finished with her. He'd had enough of her prima donna behavior, and that's why he's dumped her. But also, I mean, from his point of view, what does she now bring? There isn't anything original. There's no great sales point there. And I think you've got to look at something else. You mentioned at the beginning, Sam Kashner.
How they decide what to respond to and when to deploy their most powerful weapon, calculated silence. Because this isn't just about Meghan and Harry anymore. It's about what happens when modern celebrity culture collides with an ancient institution, when narrative control becomes more valuable than truth, and when everyone realizes too late that some wars have no winners, only survivors.